Today, I'm hoping that we will all who are invested in Jesus will understand the assignment. And that is, we are not here primarily to repair the empire. We are here mainly to replace the empire. When we look at the story of Jesus and the particular day on the Christian calendar that we are recognizing, we are looking at government intimidation. It's the first day of Passover week. Jesus had been in hiding because he knew that there was a plot to take him in. So he'd been in hiding, but on this day, he's going to make a splash. This is the day that each year the governor, in this case Pontius Pilate, would parade into Jerusalem, entering the west gate, which is the front gate, with legions of chariots, horses, foot soldiers, dressed for battle and armed with swords and spears, to say Rome's authority will not be questioned. The majesty with which Pilate enters the front door of the city was meant to inspire awe and fear and respect and obedience. But this time, at the east gate, the back gate, there's another parade underway. This parade is not to combat against the other parade, but to clarify they not like us. Even if some of them look like us, they not. I was thinking of this yesterday at De La Guerra Plaza, where Jacob largely was the leader of this, our own Jacob, a rally for disability rights. And one thing that really stood out and got this huge ovation, there was a great turnout. Jacob pointed to the fact that Elon Musk is threatening to end Medicaid. And yesterday, Jacob confronted that because, Elon is on the spectrum. And Jacob just said, Elon, you may, just because you are autistic doesn't give you a hall pass to be a shithead. That's a direct quote. And when I think of that, I think of the betrayal. And as we declared, no more cuts, no cuts to Medicaid. It makes me think of the betrayal that we see happening. Last Sunday, I told you there's always a Judas. And it makes me think of black and brown people who who have become MAGA. But here in this story, in Jesus's life, thousands of people lined the road to cheer for Jesus, just like we cheer for Jesus every time we come together. And when the chief priests and elders saw what was going on, they had already feared there could be a riot, because systems of power typically call any kind of uprising, a rally, a vigil, they can easily call it a riot. The chief priests and elders didn't just fear the people, however. They feared that Rome would intervene, crush the uprising, and strip them of their authority. So it's not that they feared the crowd so much, the protesters, but mainly they feared the military, the state, the armed state, if things got out of control. out of their control. Because totalitarianism, authoritarianism is about control. Empire is about control. So at first, the ones who were most afraid of Jesus were the religious leaders who could lose status and power and, of course, their way of life. And it was rooted in their envy. Biblical accounts show how the scribes, Pharisees, Sadducees envied Jesus. Their envy stemmed from his growing popularity, his ability to attract crowds, and the perceived threat he posed to their authority and status. Because Jesus connected with people, he loved people. They were not mere political things to move around. Jesus was competent in ways religious leaders couldn't even come close to. Their envy led to all kinds of actions against him. They spread rumors, seeking to discredit him, and ultimately, they felt like they needed to eliminate him. Lesser powers can be vicious towards people when they are intimidated by the powers above them. Remember, this was martial law. And we are living in a moment where, starting in 1 week, on April 20th, Easter Sunday, there's been talk of a threat that the president could announce martial law after invoking the Insurrection Act of 1807. It's been suggested that the military could be called in to deport people. I'm interested in your thoughts and perceptions. How could this work? I'm not saying it is going to happen or that it's going to happen then, but it could. And remember our backdrop today, we have to remember that Jesus lived in a military occupation. And some might question the possibility that this could happen, especially since in the U.S. military, a significant portion of active duty personnel are Black, what is called Hispanic or Asian. They're BIPOC. In 2017, 43% of the active duty military were racial and ethnic minorities, specifically 16% Blacks, 16% were Hispanic. Additionally, 4% were Asian and 6% identified as other. But fear of retaliation, because you wonder, how could this happen? How could they do this? Fear of retaliation, of court-martial, of removing their family's safety and provision could cause a 20-year-old or even a 40-year-old to go along to get along. And the next thing you know, well, suffice it to say that military domination with the goal of deporting millions of people is unlikely to stop there. I think any of us who have relatives in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, National Guard, we need to make sure we are in touch with our relatives, inspiring and encouraging them, informing them, challenging them, because this is the time for courage. Nelson Mandela said, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but triumph over it." Maya Angelou said, "Courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently." So in today's story, at Jerusalem's eastern gate, the back door, if you will, thousands of people lined the road to cheer for Jesus. And here's the missing piece, the piece that guts, that hollows out Easter celebrations. Listen to me. Easter celebrations are going to go on no matter what. But how true to Jesus will they be? A few days ago, another community asked me to talk with them about non-duality and justice. Maybe you've heard about the perfection of non-duality, a recognition of the already existing perfection and wholeness of every moment, of this moment. The exploration of non-duality invites a shift from seeking to seeing, from striving to recognizing, and from becoming to being. Everything you seek is already present in your current experience, including humanity living as one. But, dear ones, non-duality, or realizing that separation is an illusion, is only realized when we recognize the dishonored and recognize the unrecognized, particularly the minoritized. And sadly, this is why I feel that we as a society may not have the moral force to face our fragmentation and heal our divisions. Because we have to hide from our country's sordid history with indigenous nations and people of African descent. And nearly all our elected officials are in bed with the murderous state of Israel. And listen, the largest minoritized group in the country, in fact, in the world, is people with disabilities. Consider this. You might not have a family member who is black or brown or Asian or indigenous or Muslim, and you might not know that you have a family member who is queer, but you almost certainly are related to someone with a disability. And if we can't empathize with the others around us, then our hopes for survival and recovery are in vain. Our praying is in vain. Our big talk is in vain. Our activism is in vain. Because they are all us. I am because you are. Separation is the illusion, and we will continue to live within a state of illusion until we stand with the least of these. Do you know why? Because in the economy of the universe, the least of these did nothing to be treated the way that we treat them. They are not guilty. And when Jesus was on trial before the Roman government, Pilate found Jesus not guilty. He didn't want to execute Jesus. But those religious leaders living in denial knew how to play the game, and they told Pontius Pilate, the governor, if you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. That was a loaded threat. It implied that if he didn't execute Jesus, someone being called King of the Jews, that Pilate would look like he was tolerating a rival to Roman rule. Pilate's job depended on Caesar's favor, and he caved. He caved under pressure. He went along to get along. So the fear of riot, the fear of Roman retaliation, along with political maneuvering, all of these things played into Jesus's execution. So Jesus became expendable. Jesus became expendable because government was in a state of chaos. And the state used fear as the mechanism to counteract chaos, but fear only generates more chaos. And in the midst of all of this, something beautiful was happening. A community was developing. Instead of being driven by fear, it was nurtured by love. And you know what this community said? In a society that was obliged to declare that Caesar is Lord, they thought love was in charge. So they said, Jesus is Lord. That's what we mean whenever we say Jesus is Lord. We're saying love is in charge. Love is the only way. It's the only way forward.
Hi, everybody. Michael and I will be kind of launching our questions and discussions today. Uh, Beautiful and inspiring thoughts, Dr. Moore. And maybe I should start with something that you asked a question about. You were interested in people's thoughts about um, the April 20th threat of martial law. And maybe some of you have heard about that. I know there's a lot of scuttlebutt on the internet over it, and it's not surprising, but it's kind of surprising. Does anyone have any thoughts about that? Will the military just go along to get along and cooperate with whatever the big guy says?
I have thoughts, Linnea. Hey everyone, good
Go
morning.
ahead.
Um, I love all of it, and I was thinking so many thoughts. That business of April 20th is, he started that as soon as he got into office. Um, Issued a state of emergency, and the fine print of that state of emergency was within 90 days they will be able to decide if the country is in a state where they can now declare martial law and stick the military on our own citizens, And that has been quietly kind of waiting in the background while, you know, while the country slips into chaos. So, I love what you said about Maya Angelou and how the most important trait that we can have is courage. Because without courage, all the rest of the traits that we have mean nothing. You know what I'm saying? I think about also, like, let's say, you know, um, the military, just like you said, right? 43% minority gets an order that says, we want you to take these innocent people off the street, right, with violence. Why can't they, the enforcers, say no? You know what I'm saying? Like, no, I'm not going to do that. Get along. What did you say? Get along to go along to get
Go
along.
along to get along?
Yeah, go where? Where are you going? You know what I'm saying? You get along to, I'm sorry, go along with it in order to get along with the people who are bringing you nowhere. You know what I'm saying? They're going to destroy you and destroy everybody around you. They don't care about you. So, like, the fear, and I don't know, the fear generates courage in me, but I know everybody is not that way.
Mm-hmm.
So the people who are fired up and have the courage should definitely step to the front to try to, set an example, I guess, or whatever for the other people who are not as strong. Because you know what? The how do you say, empire is outnumbered. It's always outnumbered throughout history. Empire has been outnumbered. So why can't, it frustrates me that the fear of, I need to go along with this just in order to get along. You're getting along where? How are you going to sleep at night? You know what I'm saying? How are you going to, follow someone else's rule even though you know that it's wrong? How do you continue to live your life that way? That's not how we live. You know what I mean? So,
Mm-hmm.
Julia, you
yeah.
mentioned courage, and I want to zoom in a little bit and ask Pastor something related to that variable you talked about, which he identified and you identified as essential. David, you talked about the data about ethnic distribution, racial distribution in the troops. What about the leadership? And particularly, I remember as the campaign unfurled in this election, at least 21 at one point, 21 of the top leader, the top echelon of generals issued a letter and a statement of unity and solidarity in opposing Trump's candidacy. Um, let's look at that. Pastor, you want to give us some guidance on looking at that?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the person to to answer questions about the military, except for what we have seen happen before our very eyes, like the blatant dismissal of qualified military leaders of color, Joint Chiefs and that kind of thing. To me, that's part of the whole program.
Thoughts, Matt?
Yeah. I've been aware of this for a little while, and I read a really good article. Tim Nessinger posted it a couple months back, and he reposted it recently. And it's by the Federalist magazine or whatever. But it's an article written by a military person on Trump's style of leadership. And when I read that, I started understanding a bit more of how he moves. It's a very long article. It's almost like 2 chapters of a book. It's like 70 pages. But I started understanding how he moves. And so he moves in very militaristic ways or the article kind of points that out, of where he does something to see a reaction, and then he uses it as a way to weed out the responding action, and then he takes his real action. And so it's a military thing that is done often. And so I'm thinking of this thing as this martial law period as a way of him weeding out the despondents within the military so he can have full control of the military. That is the big scary thing. Yes, we are scared as citizens of martial law, but the big scary thing is when he does have control of the entire military. I don't think he thinks he actually has it yet. So yeah. I think right now is the weeding out, and we are going to be in fear. We are going to be, and in martial law, our networks, our community building is going to need to be excelled, like exponentially, like 10x our ability to have phone networks, calling each other, checking in with each other, grocery store getting like out and check-ins. And so, we're going to really need to understand what it really looks like to rely on our networks, ask for help, community care as far as crisis responses, community care as far as errands, support, food, really relying on farming. Those that have land.
Lots of organization.
And so, I think just us to start to prepare for that, prepare for the fear, and know that it is coming, so that way it doesn't. I mean, it's not going to catch us off guard. We're already here, but just
Thank you, Matt. Before Clint and David, before we get to your questions, I just want to read something Matt Moore put in the chat regarding a question that came up. What is martial law exactly? And so he puts here that martial law is the temporary replacement of civilian government by military rule, typically during emergencies like war, civil unrest, or natural disasters. It involves suspending normal civil rights and laws and transferring authority to military personnel. While often intended as a temporary measure, martial law can continue indefinitely. So, but basically, we would have a king. Okay, I think, Clint, you had your hand up.
Yes, I have so much to say on this. From everything from what Matt's saying to Pastor Moore, there's different levels to this. And the first level, if you remember the George Floyd protests, that was the first sign of the meek standing together quietly in protest. And you know what? Trump was in fear in the basement hiding. He was so afraid of that show of force united that he tried to do martial law. He asked his people in there, can I place my military to do that? And guess what? He was told no. So there's one lesson he learned. Okay, I got to take those people out of the mix. They can't be in my way. Then, when that didn't work, he started looking at all these other things. Yes, you have to remember something. Not only did that teach him something, it taught the resistance something. There is over 2 generations of ex-military minorities in this country who fought for a country for a belief in a system that was going to protect them and going to try and enact what the Constitution stands for. But they were now told they get no veterans' rights, they get nothing. Guess what? There's people like us that will go out and protest and do peaceful. But if they try to do that military, I'm afraid you might see the actual on paper date of the Civil War. Okay, we've had a lot of things that have been leading up to this, but there is not going to be a subtle, okay, you can do that to us this time. And I'm saying that from experience. I'm saying that from talking to people that know. And these are people that, even though they don't agree with whatever's going on, they will not see the country turned into what it's going to if he gets that power.
All right. Thank you, Clint. Dr. Dave?
Hi. So they're so petty, but I mean, that's putting it mildly to say they're so petty. But this is from the front page. Maybe I'll turn this around. Front page of yesterday's New York Times. This story I wanted to call attention to. Gone is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Maya Angelou's transformative best-selling 1970 memoir chronicling her struggles with racism. 2 copies of Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler are still on the shelves. Gone is memorializing the Holocaust, Janet Jacobs' 2010 examination of how female victims of the Holocaust have been portrayed and remembered. The Camp of the Saints by John Raspile is still on the shelves. The 1973 novel, which envisions a takeover of the Western world by immigrants from developing countries, has been embraced by white supremacists and promoted by Stephen Miller, senior White House advisor. The bell curve, which argues that black men and women are genetically less intelligent than white people, is still there. But a critique of that book has been polled. The Trump administration's decision to order banning of certain books from the U.S. Naval Academy's library is a case study in ideological censorship, alumni and academics say. So this is what they're doing. And one of the things they've done, which it just infuriates me, Pastor Moore had an uncle who was one of the Red Hooks. They made a movie about them. These were very heroic and courageous African-American pilots in World War II. And they have taken down from the Pentagon website material on them because they thought it was discriminatory or whatever they thought. I don't know what they thought. I don't think these people think very much. That's what I meant when I said they're petty. But this is what they're doing. They're engaging in censorship. And but they're not going to censor Adolf Hitler and his ilk. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah. Seeing a lot of that. Thank you.
Can I mention something? I don't have
Please,
my hand.
Marcy.
Sorry.
Yes.
So just a couple of things. We are here today where we're at. But why are we sitting around? And the activist part in me, the part that does not give an F, is saying, why the fuck are we still going to work when they are kidnapping people off the street? Why are we letting this happen? Because we're just sitting here and we're watching it. So that's the crazy activist part of me, okay? And I know that's not realistic. I know we need to, because we're not prepared, because we don't have our community gardens, our community sharing the way, we haven't built our community to be sustainable. So it's not a reality yet. So here's the organizer part of me is asking a question, posing all to you all. Is anyone interested in meeting up, Zoom, whatever, a phone call, I don't care what it is, to start creating these resources within us, within this community? Where do we start? Let's just get together and see what we have to offer. We all have something to offer, and it doesn't have to be land or material things. It could be gifts that you've been blessed with. If you know how to make clothes, if you know what I mean. We have got to get back to the basics, and I feel like we got to do it now. Martial law next week, possibly. What are we waiting for? And this is just me, like, I just need to do something. I'm sorry, I'm getting speech just now because I'm going to get emotional. But
Yeah.
like,
Well,
we are letting, I mean, people are gone and we don't know if they're alive. We don't know if the people they're
right,
kidnapping are still here. And
right,
why are we okay with this? And I know we're not, but
right.
what actions can we take against that? But for me, the main action that I would like to start the conversation on is building our communities on let's get together. Anyone who's interested, don't feel
So
bad if you're
I'm
not.
ready. Let's
basically,
go.
Don't,
Marcy, Marcy
yes.
brought this back exactly where I thought David was might go at the beginning. But when you talked about the martial law, David, my thought was, what will we do pragmatically, realistically? What will we do when that is actually occurring?
Right.
okay. Yeah, I think we're right there with you, Marcy, what you were saying. We've talked about this a lot in this group, especially on Wednesday nights, about what can we actually do and bemoaning our geographical locations being so far apart for one thing. But anyway, let's hear what Robina has to say. You wanted to respond to that, right?
And then I think Julia after
And
Rubina.
then Julia.
So I have two things. The first thing is I really appreciate what Matt had to say, and then Marcy, in building community and preparing. I really loved what um, Pastor Moore said was we're not in the business of um, I wrote it down here, of repairing empire, but replacing empire. And I think that's the kind of work that needs to get done. In Before the elections, I said that I didn't want to support the two-party system in any way because it's corrupt, it's failing, it doesn't serve us, and I think the alternatives are what we need to take a look at. While we've been bemoaning the death of democracy, democracy from the top or a two-party system is not the only democracy. There's a democracy of everyday life, which is our connection with each other. And the second thing about martial law, having lived through 3 martial laws in my own country, um, martial laws don't make kings. So if there is a martial law, Trump is not going to be king. It's the military, because you set aside the Constitution. It doesn't count any longer. It does not apply any longer. It's the rule of a repressive military government, supposedly to restore law and order, and it is their law and order. And military discipline it does not regard civilian rights in any way. So I'll stop.
Interesting. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Robina.
you, Robina. Julia?
I just had a quick comment when Marcy was saying like what can we do, and then Linnea, you were saying like what can we do? There's this question, yeah. But then what comes to mind are people who do something even though they really don't know what they need to do or should be doing. And I'm reminded of Cory Booker. You know what I mean? How like he just by speaking for as long as he did and you know making a statement to break the record from homeboy that whatever his Strom, right, who was fighting against civil rights. He just did something, and even I remember before that happened, he was they were interviewing him and he was saying, yeah, okay, we don't really know exactly what we can do, but just like Marcy said, we need to get together so that putting our heads together, we can think of things to do. I'm also reminded of Barbara's husband. Remember when he went, I think he went to Santa Maria. He stood there by himself with that
Yes.
sign. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like, so if you don't know what to do, pray on it, see what comes to mind, go do something, you know what I mean? And you never know what's going to happen. You never know what, just by standing up and speaking for 25 hours in a row, maybe I could do that, not sure what I would say, but maybe just like he was reading emails from people. Great idea, whatever we can do.
Yeah.
Anything,
Well,
anything.
that's very powerful. What one person can do can be really powerful. And those of us who are retired, we have a little more time to think about it and look around and see what groups are out there that we might want to put our actions behind. And Michael and I have kind of recently joined VC Defensa about, spreading education uh, about immigration and ICE and what constitutional rights are available to non-papered people, and we're seeing kind of how another or a couple of other organizations actually are working together. Dr. Moore had asked, can we put aside our divisions and unify? Because when the Roman government was creating all that chaos and everything, there was a movement of love developing. And I think that when different people and different groups and organizations connect and start sharing their resources and their information, like where is ICE today, in this community, and so on, that love can really be magnified.
Linnea,
Real fast. I'm sorry. One last thing, and I know I'm a big old Gabby one today, but Michael. So you want to know a tangible thing we can do with martial law? Guess what? We will never discuss that on a Zoom call.
oh, good point.
As somebody who has
Good
more
one.
pictures probably by the feds than my own, I'm aware of what they do and how they track what you do. And so, you know what? The best thing we could do is have that conversation in person
In person.
and have that conversation without electronics present.
Yeah.
You know what? And if people
Okay.
think that's paranoid, I can go ahead and refer you to some cases that occurred here in Lompoc, California in 2002, where 17 federal agencies were involved in an investigation here.
Great point.
Um,
Great
I
point.
also I concur. I had the FBI or whoever it was pay for my phone bill so that they can know what was up. So and that was with the gang cases here in Santa Barbara. So they do listen. They act. Facebook,
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
everything.
Oh,
To
So anyway,
unify
let's just
and
be careful.
synthesize what Linnea said with what you said in some previous conversations. One of the things that VC Defensa has done successfully, which I'm not giving away a secret or secret info, Clint, because it's been publicized, but as soon we have a network for getting people to the scene of ICE, okay? And we won't go into the details of that network, but the thing when we mobilize a team there, the cell phone cameras come out and we get all of it on tape. And so far, at least in Ventura County, as soon as those cell phones come on, the ice melts and they disperse. So, making it public. Go ahead, Linnea.
oh, I didn't have much. Does anybody else want to add to that? Yeah, I kind of thought that unless a red flag went out for our particular Zoom group, I kind of thought it was more secure than that. I mean, I know they can hack anything, but I don't know. I'm naive, I guess, on that score.
Well, we have our own personal little snitch here over here named Alexa. She perks her electronic ears up.
Yeah, my door is closed.
Definitely.
Other hands at all?
Let me just, the reason I said that I I question whether we, as to use Robina's word, as a democracy, I question whether we have the moral force to actually, I don't know, turn things around. Is exemplified in what I appreciate what Julia said about the stand that Cory Booker took.
Mhm.
And yet at the same time, Cory Booker immediately, forthwith, voted for $8 billion of aid to keep arming Israel.
Yep.
And so to me, what he did was pretty self-serving. I think he's setting himself up for a presidential run, perhaps. That's a more cynical take.
It was gratuitous.
It was gratuitous, and I think that even if he were elected president, I think that we're so far along in the deterioration of our respect for humans, of our regard for the minoritized, that we can push aside immigrants. The way that our society, as Marcy just observed, just they become expendable, and then someone else will be expendable. I just, that's my question. I just don't know if we have what it takes.
Yeah.
If we can override conscience so consistently and so easily in the interest of capital, I find that troublesome.
We need to, I think, ask ourselves in a real, serious, and detailed way what we are willing to sacrifice in our lives. We need to really question our own level of courage and get prepared.
If I can add one more thing, which is what counts is what we do in everyday life. And it's not the grand gestures or huge actions, but it is the things that we do every single day, which means if you do have a yard, you're blessed with a yard, grow the 1 or 2 tomato plants, and you know that the 2 tomato plants will give you much more than you can ever consume. So share it. And building community in small ways will build the groundwork to have the larger networks.
Yes.
And
So it's not always the visible that you do, it's some of the invisible ways that you can act as well.
Robina, would you say to add to that, if we are not growing the item, if we would pull back on buying the items from mega corporations and maybe look to farmers markets,
Yes.
small
I would,
businesses, local businesses?
yeah, I would go beyond that, and I'll give you the example of Argentina at the beginning of this century. I know Argentina is not doing well right now, but when they faced a major crisis, early 2000s, and the system broke down, and it broke down mostly for the middle class, which is what is happening right now, right here. Surgeons exchanged surgery for food, and they got out of the system that supports capitalism and the system that supports our government and enriches our people. So if anyone's interested, the name of the documentary escapes me right now, but it's a good case study to look into of what people did every single day, and even had alternate money in an alternate system of exchange that was community based. So there is much that we can learn from other people in what they do in the kind of crisis that we're facing now. And the crisis is for people that are privileged right now, for people like us. The crisis has always been there for those that have not been privileged.
Can you put your resource in chat for us, Robina?
The name of the documentary escapes me, but it's something like The Take. And what I can do is send you
Okay.
I'll relook at it and send it to you, and you can post it for everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robina. That sounds hopeful.
Robina, thank you for articulating and giving instructions for what I was referring to. You're so awesome. Appreciate it.
Yes, she is.
Robina, along the line of what you said locally, I'm not familiar with the specific ones, but many communities we've lived in have things called trade clubs where people of different skills trade their skill for somebody else's, and it's a little bit of an alternative economy.
Right. Yes.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Linnea and Michael, for leading our conversation, for every person who weighed in, every person who listened. We're going to have Kenichi on to lead us in communion and give our benediction. And I hope to see as many possible in person next Sunday. Kenichi,
Hi,
you look like
everyone.
those. You look like those old 35 millimeter.
Uh, well, thank you very much for this rich conversation. It's good, to have various input and feedback and observation. Um, what Sayuri and I were, uh, you know, talking about in the background was perhaps again, that's what happened in Korea, and 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 um, their president, and the president was removed. Um, no bloodshed, no violence, um, and yeah, and the military was very half-hearted in there. They just knew, what is this, and they weren't even into what they were instructed to do. So, and we know that those of us who are, very much in tune with what's happening globally, the global South, the global majority, the train has left, and America is trying to pull the train back. It ain't coming back. It's not coming back. And but anyway, I have tons of things I wanted to share, but it's okay. But one thing I do want to extract from our conversation as I was listening is Pastor David said something, these in the midst of political unrest, in the midst of military state rule that sought to squash everything that threatens in the way, in the midst of envy, in the midst of um, those who have completely yielded to the system. Um, there's something beautiful that is being birthed in the midst of that is being cultivated by love. And then, as Robina was saying, there's another form of democracy we have to remember, that comes from the everyday, the common people who have not, who are not considered as privileged, there's this democracy that has been cultivating, that have been that the privileged and those in power have been completely blinded to that fact. And so I, you know, I know that I've said this repeatedly, but I'm becoming more and more convinced that the communion really is partnering with the Christ in the birthing of this community, represented by his broken body and his shed blood. That this community is to live by a whole, a whole different set of well, really by way of love. And I just wanted to, this is just something to think about. There may be siblings amongst us that might cave in along the way because they are so threatened to the point that they may yield. But let us remember them and not throw them away, but to come alongside in love and uphold them in love, um, instead of, looking at them and say, well, you cave, so you're out, kind of thing. Something to think about. Um, so let love, and I know this is so easier said than done. I hear, I know this is to be true. Even for me, I'm trying to honestly wrestle with all this, with nonviolence, this new, ethics of the new community, love your neighbor. All these things are so real, in the sense that I am wrestling and wading through this water with you all. And so I am brought to this reminder what Jesus the Christ, his body and his shed blood represents. Another ethics, another community, another way of exercising democracy, all cultivated by love. So let's join with one another. The body of Christ broken for us. Let's take